Hello and welcome to the France24 interview. I am joined today by a woman of letters, an author, poet, translator, journalist, and most controversially, the founder of an erotic magazine in Arabic. Her name is Joumana Haddad, and at the time, 2 years ago, she even received death threats. Her latest book is a work of nonfiction coming out here in France, written in English. It's called I Killed Scheherazade, Confessions of an Angry Arab Woman. These confessions are her own personal story of coming of age intellectually, but they're also an exploration of what exactly it means to be an Arab woman today. Welcome, Joumana. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So we know from your title that you are an Arab woman, but tell us a little bit about where you come from.
I come from Lebanon. I was born and I grew up in Beirut, and which tells you a little bit about how difficult it was for me in a country in a state of war. The war began when I was 4, and so this is why books and reading has been so vital for me, and that's what I say in my book, because it allowed me windows that weren't allowed in my daily life. So it was a kind of escape, but in the positive sense of escaping.
Right. The book is a little bit your confessions about your readings, you know, the literature, the books, the words that affected you and that helped you come of age. You begin the book, though, with a question that a journalist asked you, and she was a foreign journalist who asked how an Arab woman like you came to found such a controversial erotic magazine. It seems like a good question to me, but at the time you were put off by it.
Well, yeah, I felt a little bit angry, and then I started thinking, why did I feel so much angry because of that question? Actually, I felt angry because I knew, because I lived in the inside, I knew that there were many Arab women like me. And I had enough of all these cliches, you know, that were still persisting in the West about Arab women, about the oppressed, veiled, victimized Arab women, which is partly true, of course, because every cliche has a part of truth in it, but which was incomplete because there was also a different Arab woman, or rather many different Arab women. And I wrote this book essentially as a reflection, as a way to show the Westerner, first and foremost, that there's another Arab woman out there. But then while I was writing, my reader, became also the Arab woman herself, because I felt that it was important for me to make her responsible, at least partly, of these cliches.
Well, let's actually talk about that aspect exactly. That's something I wanted to get to. You in the book, aside from revealing to us your own coming of age, the coming of age of an Arab woman, it's also about trying to get at who the Arab woman really is. Because it seems like everybody thinks there are so many things she's not. She's not free. She's not sexual. She's not independent. Why do you think there are so many preconceived notions about Arab women?
Well, I think there are lots of reasons, but one of the main, which really make me angry, is the insistence of the mass media on showing that side and that side alone. Taking the sensationalist side of any story. Let's take, if there's a woman who is going to be stoned to death, like we're witnessing now, she makes the headlines. Of course, this is barbaric. This is something that we all should stand against. But I would like to see, alongside that example, more positive examples of women who are trying to do something for the Arab world, who are trying to fight from the inside in order that so that the first woman has a better world someday. And that's something that is missing, I mean, mostly, without generalizing, in the Western media.
So you'd like to say that there is an Arab woman who is none of those things, who actually has power, who has words, who has anger.
Sure.
You've also said that in some ways, though, the Arab woman is her own worst enemy.
Yes, unfortunately.
Is that true, and is that fair?
It is fair. It is fair because it's an Arab woman telling you that. So it's a judgment very much based on my experience. I mean, sometimes people tell me you grew up as a Christian. You know, Christian Arab women are much more liberated than Muslim Arab women. I know there's this cliche as well.
Certainly.
But it's not true because
you anticipated the question before I could ask it.
Of course, because, I grew up in a very conservative family. My father was so conservative that he wouldn't even let me go to the movies by myself when I was at home. I got married at 19 in order to become independent and responsible of my own decisions. So we shouldn't just rush and make those judgments, because it's not about being a Muslim or being a Christian. And I think that religion as a whole, especially monotheist religions, have always been the worst enemies of women's emancipation. They have always treated them like accessories. It's about fighting this society from the inside. So,
but it's a little bit paradoxical what you're saying, because on the one hand, the way your conservative Christian father's upbringing, the sort of Muslim or at least extreme religious ideas about women, all of that does seem to protect Arab women, to think of them as being vulnerable, to not wanting them to be exposed to things like the movies in the case of your father. So in some ways, Arab culture, as you were telling me about it now, does seem to project an image of this Arab woman that the West certainly does project again.
Yeah, I did say that in the book. This is why I said that we are responsible and that we are our own worst enemies. But like I said before, it's important to also project a different image, because this same woman who was brought up in a very conservative family, has made her battles, and she was able, because sometimes Arab women tell me, what could we do? I mean, we're like that, we're victims, and that's not true. Everybody can do something.
So in some ways, your story, and coming to find the words that you use now, are an example for other Arab women?
I wouldn't say that. It would be too presumptuous. But that was my experience, and with all the few elements, backing up my success that were there. And if I made it till now, and if I was able to do what little I was able to do, it means that even by small steps, a woman can change her destiny and the destiny of... let's talk about motherhood. Motherhood is a great power, and she's not investing that, unfortunately. She's educating her sons to become like her father, her husband. She's educating her daughters to become like her, another model of a victimized woman. And
it's interesting. So you're talking about a different model of potential,
yes,
for the Arab woman. In your own discovering what your potential could be, in the books you read, in the poems you write, sexuality is a big factor. And you founded this erotic magazine, and it's interesting because you're also the editor of the culture editor of a big daily newspaper in Lebanon. You could have founded any kind of literary magazine, and yet you founded this one.
I didn't want any kind of literary magazine. I wanted something needed and new. And like you said, the body has always been my inspiration in my writing, right from the beginning. And I thought, isn't it about time for us to discuss all these taboos that are entangling our culture and our language? If we go back to the Arabic culture, we have a rich tradition in talking about sexuality. If you go back to books that were published in the 11th century or the 12th century, you would be amazed by the amount of freedom of expression that was there when sexuality was involved. So it was about saying what went wrong and how can we, reconciliate our modern world, this world that we're living in now, with that tradition, that wonderful tradition that we had.
And is there something sort of paradoxical about the way Arab women in particular experience their own bodies, Lebanese women even in particular?
Yeah, I talk about that in the book. It's very, there's a big amount of schizophrenia, because the same, emancipated it was more about the illusion of freedom that I sensed. And this emancipated woman who thinks that she's emancipated because she can dress as she wants, at least not all Lebanese women, but many of them, because she can go wherever she wants to go, etc., etc. She's the same woman who is very much discriminated at the level of laws, and she's distracted from these important fights by the fact that she feels free just because she can go dancing till 4 o'clock in the morning. It's the same woman who goes to, who follows, studies, and then her dream is to find the right husband.
Right.
So
is it in some ways the symbol of a false emancipation, a kind of a sexuality that's sort of worn but not incarnated?
Yes,
somehow?
yes, and I did want to talk about that because she is always given as an example of freedom, of free women in the Arab world, and I wanted to say it's a trap. Again, I'm not generalizing. There are really free women from the inside. But this, what I'm talking about here, it's a trap. This is not real freedom. Real freedom is to be capable, to be economically independent, is to be capable to decide what to do with your own life and with your body at a more profound and authentic level.
This will be the last question, unfortunately, of our interview, but it's one that in some ways sums it up. I mean, you're quite critical and in some ways quite hostile to the Arab world. You could live anywhere in the world. You speak 7 different languages, and you choose to remain in Beirut.
Yeah, it's like what I said. If there's a wall out there, and there surely is, it can only be torn down from the inside. And I'm not saying that I'm the messenger of a big cause. No, but I believe that what I have started, I have to keep on doing it from the inside. At least for now, I keep the right to change my mind tomorrow. I could change my mind tomorrow, and it's my right. But till now, I'm convinced I have to stay there.
Well, thank you, Joumana, for being with us today.
Thank
we'll end
you.
on those sort of words of freedom, a bit of a song of freedom. Thank you for joining us, and stay with us for news.